Alexandra Eala notes the big change she's already noticed in the Philippines following her WTA success. Alexandra Eala has arrived in Melbourne for her very first Australian Open main draw match. Eala has been given a tough draw at the Australian Open, which begins with a first-round match against American Alicia Parks. The star has been rewarded for her fine form in 2025 with guaranteed entry at the Australian Open, after dropping out of the qualifying stages in the last 2 years. The star's rise up the rankings has made her incredibly popular in her home country, and she's shared a change she's already seen in the Philippines. Alexandra Eala says tennis is becoming more and more popular in the Philippines. Eala has been well supported by Filipinos in Australia, and that support extends back to her home country too. The 20-year-old was asked about her support in the Philippines, and if she's noticed any changes in the popularity of tennis. She said, "Well, yeah, that's the reality, is when back home tennis is not one of the biggest sports in the running, I would say. Hopefully that's changing. With the WTA 125, I think that's a great goal for people to look forward to, for the Filipinos to look forward to." Eala also said that she finds out about tennis rising popularity from her family who still live in the Philippines. "It always makes me happy when I come home and my cousins will tell me, like, oh, it's so hard to get a court now." So those are good signs. I think people just in the Philippines, we just have to make the first step. I think we're making some good steps, yeah. Eala will play the Philippine Women's Open as a wild card if she does not make the second week of the Australian Open, who Alexandra Eala has been practicing with at the Australian Open. Eala's preparations for her first Australian Open are well underway in Melbourne, following the star's victory at the Kooyong Classic. The star has been playing with several WTA stars at Melbourne Park as she looks to arrive fit and ready for her first match against Parks. Eala was spotted practicing with Coco Gauff on Friday, the 16th of January, a player she shares plenty of history with. Gauff and Eala previously played doubles at the Miami Open, after the Filipina star sent the American a doubles request on Instagram. Later on in the day in Melbourne, and Eala was seen hitting with world number 194, Menenchaya Sawangkayu. The pair will both be representing Southeast Asia at the Australian Open, and Sawangkayu will play Emma Raducanu in round 1. Alexandra Eala did not expect the change to arrive so quickly, or so loudly. She thought success would feel private at first, something that lived inside her racket bag, inside the calluses on her hand, inside the lonely hours of training that no camera ever saw. But the Philippines has a way of turning individual victories into shared celebrations, and once Alexandra's name began appearing on WTA scoreboards, the ripple became a wave. She noticed it first in the smallest places. At an airport cafe in Manila, a television replayed a tennis highlight between news segments. A child pointed at the screen and said her name out loud, carefully, like a new word still being tested on the tongue. Alexandra smiled to herself, coffee cooling in her hands, realizing that tennis, once a whisper in her country, had learned how to speak. A sport once on the sidelines. For decades, the Philippines loved sports loudly, but selectively. Basketball courts appeared in every barangay, their rims rusted but revered. Boxing heroes were celebrated as national myths. Tennis, by contrast, lived behind gates, private clubs, limited courts, a sport many admired from afar but few believed belonged to them. Alexandra grew up knowing this reality. Even as a junior player, her dreams often felt like they required translation. People would ask why tennis, why not something more Filipino? She learned early that ambition sometimes meant standing alone, trusting that one day the results would explain what words could not. Her WTA success did more than validate her personal journey. It shifted the national conversation. Suddenly, tennis was no longer just an imported sport played elsewhere. It had a Filipino accent. It had brown skin under the sun. It had a young woman who spoke with humility but competed with fire. The morning after a match, after one of her breakthrough wins, Alexandra woke up to a phone that would not stop buzzing. Messages came from relatives she hadn't spoken to in years, from former classmates, from strangers who felt close because they had watched her fight point by point on screen. What surprised her most was not the praise, but the gratitude. "Thank you for making us proud. My daughter wants to play tennis now. We stayed up all night to watch." The Philippines is a country that feels deeply, collectively. Wins are shared, losses are mourned together. Alexandra realized that her matches were no longer just her own. Each forehand carried expectations, hope, and belief from millions who saw themselves in her persistence. Courts that suddenly felt smaller. When Alexandra returned home, the courts felt different, not physically, but emotionally. Coaches approached her not just as a player, but as proof. Parents watched from the sidelines with a new intensity, imagining futures that once seemed unrealistic. She noticed more kids holding rackets that were slightly too big for them, gripping them with determination. She noticed conversations changing, from tennis is hard to pursue to where can my child train. The question had shifted from doubt to direction. In sports, belief is infrastructure. Before funding, before facilities, before programs, there must be faith that success is possible. Alexandra's presence on the WTA tour planted that belief like a seed in Filipino soil. Carrying the flag without being weighed down. Alexandra is careful not to romanticize the pressure. Representing an entire nation can be heavy, especially for someone still learning herself. But she approaches it the same way she approaches a tough match, point by point, breath by breath. She does not see herself as a savior of Philippine tennis. She sees herself as a signal. Her success tells young players that the gap between local courts and global stages is not unbridgeable. It tells federations and sponsors that investment is not charity, it is opportunity. It tells girls, especially, that strength and grace can coexist, that competitiveness does not require apology. Media, mirrors, and meaning. The media attention changed, too. Interviews once focused on novelty, the Filipina tennis player, now centered on performance, tactics, growth. Alexandra appreciated this shift. It meant she was being taken seriously as an athlete, not just celebrated as a symbol. Still, she understood the power of symbols. When she saw herself on billboards, in articles, in social media posts shared thousands of times, she thought about responsibility. Not to be perfect, but to be real. To show that success includes setbacks, that confidence includes doubt, that progress is rarely linear. In a country where young people often look abroad for validation, Alexandra's journey offered a mirror. You can come from here. You can train here. You can belong anywhere. A change you can feel.